Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I think you're already, most of you, familiar with me. My name is Scott Kane. I'm one of the group of folks with the Office of Education Technology that takes care of E-rate. This is I'm about to go into my 16th year. I can't believe that I'm already that far along. Those of you who've been around that whole time with me, thank you very much for putting up with me for all that time. I hope that this will continue to be useful for you as we go forward. Today's topic is going to be eligible services and filing the Form 470. Um, We'll take a look at some general information about the form, or excuse me, about eligible services, what is, what isn't eligible, how to determine that, and then also how to request services under the E-rate program by filing your Form 470. Before we get too much further into things, I do want to encourage you, if you have questions, please feel free to jump in audibly and just say, hey, Scott, I've got a question. I don't have a problem with that at all because, quite honestly, I'm looking at the presentation full screen just like you are. In fact, you probably have an easier way of seeing other things going on than I do, but I want it to be as big as possible for you on your screen. So I've got it full screen, so I can't see the actual chat that comes up, any questions that come up in the chat. Caprice Robinson, who is with us today. She's also a member of our E-rate team. She will be keeping an eye on the chat and will be alerting me. So if you don't want to jump in, if you want to throw it in the chat, feel free to throw any questions in the chat. There will also be an opportunity for questions at the end as well. But as I always said, I don't mind if you want to stop me mid-sentence. That does not bother me at all. So please feel free. Any questions? I've said many times, and I will continue to say that the only dumb question about E-rate is the question that you don't ask. Because if you have the question and you don't ask it, that's the kind of thing that can get you in some trouble. So without further ado, I'm going to dive right into eligible services. You'll notice that this presentation is labeled with the Universal Service Administrative Company's logo. This was extracted from a collection of slides that they provided for 2026 training when they put on their training in both Denver and DC this year. But as you can see in the corner, it is available for public use. And so rather than reinventing the wheel, I thought we'll just make some minor modifications and make sure that it's tailored to our needs here in the state of Kentucky. So let's dive right in. When it comes to E-rate, there are eligible services, things that you can get money for to help support your processes within your school districts. Each year before the opening of the year, the FCC releases a list, the eligible services list, which contains some general guidance on the equipment and services that are eligible for the upcoming year. It also provides information on eligibility conditions for each of the categories of service, and that is important information. And you can only receive funding for equipment that falls under the categories within the eligible services list. Note also, of course, that those services must be primarily for educational use. The ESL has not been. A draft has been released for 2026. At this point, we're really not expecting there to be any major changes to it. There are a couple of changes that were made on the draft, but as you all are aware, the government shutdown that's going on, the feds, the FCC is not active when it comes to working on these kinds of things. So they have not yet finalized in a formal sense that eligible services list for 2026. We've received no information as to how that will work, whether it will be truly and formally finalized before the opening of the funding window, which USAC has shared is likely to be somewhere around January 15th through March 25th. That is sort of, I think you could call it rumor mill. It's probably fairly reliable rumor mill information, but it is not formalized. So, understand that there could be some adjustments to those dates. But if there is no draft, or if there is no finalization of the ESL for 2026 prior to that, I do not know at this point how that might affect the Form 471 filing window. So stay tuned for more information as we go forward. Services are broken up into two different major categories of services. Category 1 services are the services needed to support or deliver broadband connectivity to eligible schools and libraries. Category 2 services are the services and or equipment needed to deliver broadband connectivity within a school or library, and services needed to bring broadband into and then provide it throughout those schools and or libraries. Some equipment and services may be fully or only partially eligible for E-rate support. So just be aware that depending upon what it is that you are requesting and the functionality thereof, there may be only a certain portion of a particular piece of equipment, for example, that would be eligible for E-rate support. So you may have to make some adjustments to the costs and do some allocation, which we will discuss when we talk about filing the Form 471, which is actually requesting your funding. We will get to that in January with our training in January. But in the meantime, if you have any questions about that, don't hesitate to reach out to any of our E-rate team members. We're more than happy to help provide you with guidance and assistance before that time. Category 1 it really only has one major subcategory, and that is the data transmission and or internet access. Now, what shape that takes, we'll talk about in just a moment. But then the other one is Category 2. Internal connections, managed internal broadband services, and basic maintenance of internal connections. Those three subcategories make up the broad Category 2 set of services. For Category 1, there is no limit or budget affecting how much you can request. It does have to be within the reasonable need and that you might have. You're only allowed to basically request funding for and services to deliver that which is actually needed and going to be used. Additional and extra capacities or supplied, or backup is not eligible. For Category 2, however, there is a budget. Most of you are probably aware that you have a budget that is going to be reset as we go into funding year 26 through 2030. Can you believe we're talking about 2030 already? Just kind of blows my mind. Sorry, sidebar there. But there is additional information available on the Category 2 budgets page. And by the way, all the links and so on and so forth, this presentation will be posted to the E-rate district collection site, which is our sort of one-stop shop for everything E-rate for the Commonwealth. And we will also post the video so that you can come back to it if you need to at any time. Category 1 services. These are some examples of service to the entity. Least lit fiber or dark fiber might include also internet access, although in most cases, I think in the Commonwealth, since your NGKI connection provides you with internet access, generally most of you will be applying for transmission services rather than internet access, but would also include potentially satellite services, DS1, DS3, all the DSs, all the OSs, DSL, and broadband over power lines. That would also include microwave service, et cetera, et cetera. Category 1 services, again, what are the eligible costs? Monthly charges, that's obviously your monthly cost, what you receive from your service provider. Also included in that would be a special construction. So if anything needs to be built out in order to bring the wires that bring the data to any particular building within your district, that special construction can be eligible, including also installation and activation charges. If there's any software that's necessary to deliver those services, that might also be eligible. There are certain situations, and we'll discuss these shortly, in which modulating electronics or equipment that's necessary to deliver that Category 1 service and make it functional would also be eligible under Category 1. And then maintenance and operations charges, including costs for software needed for the operation of the or maintenance of the network equipment, may also be eligible. And certainly not least, the 2024 eligible services list clarified that software necessary to operate or maintain Category 1 eligible is eligible under Category 1. Types of Category 2 services. We mentioned internal connections. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about routers, switches, wireless access points, wireless controllers, the wiring itself within the building. Those kinds of things are all fall under the category of, or the subcategory of internal connections. Also included under Category 2 services, the type of services, basic maintenance or of internal connections, basic maintenance and technical support appropriate to maintain reliable operations, and then also managed internal broadband services. This would be a third-party operation management and monitoring of your eligible connections, is also a service that you can obtain under Category 2. Category 2 services, as mentioned, have a 5-year budget based on your student count, and that 5-year budget can be spent across those 5 years as you see fit. So you don't have to divide it up equally for each year. You can save it until the end of the 5-year period, or you can could use it toward the front end. It really depends on what your needs are and how you see fit. Also included in that, it's important to note that there is no longer any building level budget, which means that you can choose to expend your available Category 2 budget funds at any particular eligible location. So you don't have to divide it up equally or based upon your student counts from one building to another. Those of you who've been around for a few years, you know that back in the day, that was the way that you had to spend your Category 2 budget, at least during the first round of Category 2. So that has changed, and that is a very positive change, I think, in many people's eyes. Service examples, I mentioned this before: cables, routers, switches, modems, right to use or client access licenses. That's an important one as well. Many of you will find that you will need that right to use licenses or client access licenses. If the license is for example, an access point, that the access point falls under internal connections, so the access licenses that go with that access point also fall under internal connections. Service type examples under basic maintenance would be repair and upkeep of eligible cabling, routers, switches, and modems. So all that stuff that falls under internal connections, if it's related to basic maintenance of those things, not client access, not right to use, but repair and upkeep, that would fall under basic maintenance, or BMIC. You might hear me refer to it as BMIC. Note on the multi-year maintenance service subscriptions, only maintenance services provided in the applicable funding year are eligible in that year. In other words, 1 year of a 3-year subscription should be requested on a current funding year request and invoiced a year at a time over that 3-year period. And then a managed Wi-Fi agreement, for example, might fall under your managed broadband services. And just remember that any MIBS service that is eligible is going to have to be applied to an eligible Category 1 service that you are already receiving. It does not necessarily have to be provided by the same service provider. So you might have a separate service provider that provides your dark fiber, and that company is separate from the company that actually does the monitoring and management, day-to-day management of your broadband services. So those may be two very different providers. Some important details with respect to BMIC. The basic maintenance of internal connections is related to repair and upkeep of eligible internal connections. Uh, these can be divided into in-person services, which is kind of obvious. It's on-site repair, time and material kinds of contracts. And then there are also remote services, which includes maintenance support services such as technical support, configuration changes, bug fixes, patches, software upgrades, etc., etc. The equipment being maintained must be eligible in order for the maintenance to be eligible as well. So you must be, if you could get BMIC support for your E-rate eligible switches or routers, but you would not be, but what would not be eligible would be for, let's say, a video server. Those kinds of things that are not eligible, you would have to pay in full for any maintenance contracts for that equipment. Excuse me. Further examples: repair and upkeep of eligible hardware. Again, that's going to be in person. Wire and cable maintenance, that also will fall under in person. Any configuration changes, which might actually fall under in person or remote. Basic technical support, somebody that can log on and come into your network remotely and do maintenance or provide you with additional support. And then the software and patches, including bug fixes and security patches, that would also fall under remote services. But again, it would fall under basic maintenance of internal connections. And any license that provides for maintenance functionality should be requested under BMIC on the Form 470, not as a client access or right to use license. So that's maintenance functionality that's related to those licenses. That should be BMIC. If you ever run into any situation where you're not sure, you can certainly reach out to us on the E-rate team, or you can file a client a customer service case in Epic and request for some clarification. They should be able to help you as well. Exclusions to BMI services, the actual equipment itself, that would be eligible under internal connections, obviously. An unbundled warranty, that is to say that a warranty that does not come directly with a piece of equipment. Network management services. Now we're getting into somebody that's watching your network, making sure it's operating properly and fixing any minor issues that might arise or things that can be done remotely. That would be eligible under Managed Internal Broadband Services, MIBS. You'll hear me refer to it as MIBS on a regular basis. Management and operation monitoring, again, that's MIBS. Maintenance on ineligible equipment, as mentioned, is not eligible for E-rate funding. So remember that any maintenance must be for an E-rate eligible piece of equipment. And then exclusions also include internal connection software, right to use, client access licenses. Those would fall under internal connections because those are providing functionality to those internal connections type of equipment. Some equipment has mixed BMIC and internal connections functionality. Some vendors' licenses may include both BMIC and IC functionality, such as right to use and maintenance services on the same license. So if that license has both, you're going to have to make sure that your your service requests on your Form 470, and we'll look at this in a little bit, that has to be, you will have to make sure that you are requesting services under both BMIC and in internal connections functionality or service types. You'll have to split that license based on the functionality into separate funding requests for both BMIC and internal connections. And if you don't know whether there is or isn't, and this will be an important question to ask because I think more and more this is becoming the case. We had in the last year or so a couple of folks who purchased from the CATS contracts, a couple of different types of equipment, and I wish I remembered the specifics, but I'm drawing a blank in the moment. But I do recall a couple of situations where folks were partially denied funding because USAC had ruled that a portion of the functionality of that particular piece of equipment fell under BMIC, or excuse me, fell under MIBS actually. And when it says mixed BMIC and internal connections functionality, that could also be MIBS and internal connections as well. So just be aware that there may be multiple functions that are built into a single piece of equipment. And so in order to make sure that you can get support for the full piece of equipment and all of its functionality, you'll need to make sure that you are requesting both sets of services, both BMIC and or MIBS and internal connections. Here you can see that the tip is during your competitive bidding process, if you are seeking bids for right to use functionality and maintenance subscription services, be sure to post for all applicable service types on the Form 470. And they give the example IC and BMIC or IC and MIBS. Changing service types after submitting your Form 471. If you have gone through, first of all, you start by filing your Form 470. It is possible that when you get to your Form 471 that you might accidentally misidentify the service type on your Form 471, and you may have to make some changes. First of all, you want to be sure that you are posting your Form 470 for all the service categories for which you are requesting bid responses. And here's the important thing. FCC Forms 470 with the correct service type are required for corrections to be made on the 471. That means that if you leave off one of those service types on your Form 470, there is no correcting, and there will be no way that you can get funding through your Form 471 for that portion of whatever you've requested that falls outside of the correct service type. We'll talk about that as we look at the Form 470 a little bit more, but the bottom line is, if you're not exactly sure whether it's internal connections or basic maintenance of internal connections, or it's internal connections and BMIC, you want to make sure, or excuse me, MIBS, you want to make sure that you are requesting all that apply. To request changes identified after the Form 471 is certified, assuming that your Form 470 was fully correct and covered all of the aspects necessary before the FCDL is issued, you can submit a receipt acknowledgement letter modification, a RAL modification request. And we'll talk about that during the Form 471 training, how you do that and the steps that you can take to do that. And then to request changes after the FCDL is issued, you can submit a service substitution request with a detailed narrative providing the background information, any calculations for changes, single year versus multi-year, and the reason why it is that you need the correction. Multi-year maintenance support services, oftentimes you'll have a contract that covers more than 1 year with respect to your maintenance support services. These are preventive and remedial services that physically repair or optimize the hardware, including maintenance under contract per incident repair. Services are only eligible for 1 funding year at a time. You must apply for each year separately. So you'll have to file a Form 471 for each year related to the services under a maintenance support contract. You would prorate the cost of the service for 1 year and only invoice after the services are received for the applicable funding year. If services extend outside of the funding year window, the invoice will be modified to only pay the current funding year services. You'll need to make sure that you inform the reviewer which of the multi-year contract you are invoicing for. So for example, if you are in the midst of a a 3-year contract from 25 through 27. When you're submitting your request, you would want to make sure that you indicate to your reviewer that you are requesting funds for that second year of your 3-year contract. Remember also that the physical repair and hardware optimization, somebody coming on site and doing work, the only portion of that contract that is eligible for support is for actual work performed. So it is possible that you'd pay for the contract, and if no work is done under that contract, you still owe the money for that contract, because obviously you have that arrangement with your provider. But at the same time, because no services were performed in that particular year, there are no services for which you can file for reimbursement. Budgeting by category. Generally, there are no limits to cost as long as you are cost effective under Category 1. We've talked about this already with respect to Category 2 services being limited by a pre-discount cost or ceiling. And it's worth noting that this is a pre-discount cost. So you're calculating your budget based upon a total dollars, not on the amount of dollars that you are eligible to receive back based upon your discount rate. The budget period is 5 years, as mentioned, and the budget calculation is based on the number of full-time students in your school. There is a budget floor, and there for smaller school buildings, for smaller school districts. So if you have 10 or fewer instructional buildings, and you have an instructional building that has fewer than 150 students, you are eligible. That building is eligible for a funding floor, which I believe is now somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000 and change, I think it is now. Excuse me. So just be aware that there are multiple ways that budget can be calculated. If you have any questions on that budget calculation, again, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us or file a customer service case. For recurring services are obviously those that are billed monthly, typically billed monthly. This is your broadband or internet access service. This is going to be, in general, that's going to be your Category 1 services that will fall under recurring services. Those services must be delivered during the relevant funding year. For example, for 2026, that means that recurring services must be delivered between July 1st of 26 and June 30th of 27. Non-recurring services, one-time charges for equipment and services that are delivered and installed. Applicants and service providers will have until September 30th following the close of the funding year to deliver and install non-recurring C2 services. So essentially that gives you an extra 90 days to complete any C2 related projects. And for 2026, that means that your funding year for Category 2 runs from July 1, 26 through September 30th of 27. This service deadline can be extended under certain circumstances. Usually has to do with an inability on the part of the service provider to actually follow through and deliver the services that were promised. Are you allowed to do any advanced installation? Well, yes, you are. Some Category 1 non-recurring equipment can be installed as early as January 1 prior to the July 1 start of the funding year, if certain conditions are met. Excuse me, and we'll talk about those conditions in just a moment. Category 2 non-recurring services can be installed beginning in April 1 prior to the start of the funding year. So if you have networking equipment that's going to be sitting in a school, and that networking equipment is going to be critical to delivering a Category 1 service within that building, you are eligible to do the installation of those Category 2 non-recurring services as early as April 1st before the start of the funding year, so that when you start paying for recurring services, those recurring services can be delivered in full starting at the beginning of that funding year. Category 1, advanced installation. As mentioned, there are some conditions that must be met in order for you to be eligible to do begin in construction or installation as of January 1. These conditions include the construction beginning after selection of your service provider. That service provider must have been selected pursuant to a Form 470 with the requisite 28 days and with the requisite competitive bidding process having been fully implemented. And for what it's worth, shameless plug here, a week from today, we have another training that we will talk about the competitive bidding process in some detail. So I'd encourage you to, if you can't make that, certainly you'll want to get into the recording of that, but we hope that you can attend that as well. So a Category 1 recurring service must depend on the installation of that infrastructure. So you're making sure that that Category 1 service will be fully implemented based and that has, if I'll bite my tongue here, try again. A Category 1 service must depend on the installation and infrastructure in order for you to be allowed to start as early as January 1. If you are talking about a Category 2 service that you want to have done, you will have to wait until April 1st in order to begin that process of installation or any kind of infrastructure build out that is Category 2 related. And then the Category 1 recurring services actual start date is on or after July 1st of the funding year. And certainly very important to this whole thing is that funding is not guaranteed until USAC issues a funding commitment letter. So there is a certain element of risk that you are taking on in beginning prior to the issuance of a funding commitment decision letter. So just be aware of that, because that is an important distinction. You could get yourself into a situation where you are on the hook for the full cost of a project that you did not think that you were going to have to pay for the full project, depending upon how things play out with respect to the funding commitment that USAC issues to you. Advanced installation on Category 2 services cannot start until after the 28-day competitive bidding process is completed and a service provider is selected. And again, funding is not guaranteed until USAC issues a funding commitment decision letter. And just so that we make sure that we've really nailed that home, funding is not guaranteed until USAC issues a funding commitment decision letter. Also be aware that invoicing cannot begin until after July 1 of the funding year. So even if you do work in January, February, right on up through June, ahead of the funding year, you cannot have your invoices dated prior to that July 1. The dating of your invoices, meaning the date that you filed for reimbursement, cannot occur until after the funding year has begun. Otherwise, those requests will be denied. All right, so let's talk about fiber here for a little bit. There's a couple of different options that you have if you are interested in obtaining fiber for your data transport between your buildings. You have leased lit fiber, which is the easiest of the options for certain, because you pay a simple monthly fee and the service provider provides the fiber, the connections, the network equipment, and the data transport and/or internet access service. They also manage and maintain the network. So if a squirrel comes along and decides he's hungry and chews through your fiber line, out comes the service provider to take care of it. Awesome, works really well. Also tends to be more expensive for obvious reasons than some of the other options. What are your other options? Well, second one is leased dark fiber, and this is where you pay a portion of you lease a portion of an existing fiber network that's owned by a service provider, and you're paying separately for network equipment, maintenance and operations, and data transport and or internet access over that fiber. Now, you wouldn't necessarily have to pay for data transport as long as you've got your equipment, but it does have to be your equipment that will be then providing that data transport over that dark fiber. In other words, you are the ones who light that fiber, and then if the squirrel, sometimes depending upon your contract, if the squirrel decides that he's going to chew through one of your lines, then you're going to have to be out there doing the repair and the splicing and whatnot on your own, or find somebody that can do it for you outside of an E-rate contract. And then last but certainly not least is the applicant owns a high-speed broadband network of their own. You hire a vendor to construct a network or portion of your network, and thereafter you completely or partially own and maintain that portion of that network or that portion of the network. An E-rate eligible entity may share those services and equipment used to construct and or operate self-provision networks supported by E-rate funds with an ineligible third party, as long as the ineligible third party pays its share of the cost. In other words, if you are using 40% of a network that is basically that 40% has been given or provided to you, whoever you're sharing that full 100% with, they're going to have to pay in full their 60%, and none of that is going to be eligible for E-rate support. Only your discount rate will be applied to the 40% of that network cost that is up to you to cover. Although you'll note, as included as a fiber option, the self-provision network may utilize technologies other than fiber. The applicant owns the network and it hires a service provider to construct it. The applicant pays for the network equipment, it pays to maintain the network, and it pays for any data transport or internet access services separately. The self-provision network is a technology-neutral eligible service. Applicants may self-provision a fiber network, but applicants may also self-provision network technologies using networks using other technologies, such as fixed microwave, or a mix of fiber and other technologies, like microwave or satellite or copper or what, OC, DS, et cetera, et cetera. And in light of this, the FCC adopted a technology-neutral competitive bidding standard for self-provision networks. They refer to this as service provided over third-party networks. And I'm not sure why they felt the necessity to over-verbalize that, but what this really comes down to is that if you are interested in obtaining and owning a network for yourself for the district, you are going to have to request services provided over a third-party network. You cannot just go out there and say, we want a district-owned fiber network, because when you say you want fiber, you are indicating you are no longer being technology neutral in your request for bids, and that's going to be an important distinction. So just be aware that you have to make sure that, much like on the Category 2 side, for those of you who have done this once or twice, you might know that with Category 2, if you're requesting a piece of equipment and you mention that there's a piece of equipment that has the functionality that you really want, that you have to say, we want this piece of equipment or equivalent. This is a very similar kind of thing when it comes to this self-provision network, where you can say, we want fiber service or equivalent. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Is we're going to say that we need a network that can deliver a certain bandwidth and latency and jitter and all those kinds of, you can lay out the technical specs that you need to be able to operate the network as you want and as you need, but you have to accept bids that may not necessarily be fiber-based. It could be based on some other technology. Having said that, as I sort of alluded to, you can also construct a set of criteria in such a way that based upon your specs, fiber may be the only option for receiving that requested bandwidth or capacity. So that's kind of a backdoor around that technology neutral requirement, in that there may only be one, and that's fiber. Fiber is the only thing that can deliver the capacity, the speed, the specs that we need. So it is helpful to have very clearly spelled that out, particularly if you know that you absolutely, yeah, we want a fiber network. We don't want anything that maybe fly by night or microwave, or it might be line of sight, and then we have to build towers, and the microwave has to point to a certain spot and it gets bounced off of, all those kinds of things. If you want to avoid that, the best way to do that is to lay out some very, very specific specs that indicate that, through the back door, that only fiber is really the way that you're going to be able to reach your to address your needs. Fiber, networking equipment. A single piece of network equipment, also called basic terminating equipment, is eligible under Category 1. A single piece must be located at the DMARC, the point at which the service provider would start to check if service were interrupted. Basically, this means like from your NGKI rack outward. So whatever it's coming in, it comes into your NGKI rack. Then you might have Category 1 connections that go out to your individual buildings. So for example, the GBICs that sit at each end of those Category 1 connections, those would be eligible under Category 1 as Category 1 network equipment. Other pieces of networking equipment would be eligible under Category 2 internal connections. Networking equipment also includes electronics and necessary equipment to make that Category 1 fiber service functional. Imagine it this way: if you take that piece out, will your Category 1 connection be able to continue to work? If the answer is no, then that would probably be a Category 1 network piece, eligible category. A Category 1 eligible network equipment. Some resources for you. These are just basically links to the USAC website that will provide you with some additional information if you need it. Let me stop right there for a second and see if there are any questions, and then we'll move into filling out a Form 470. And I'm going to stop sharing, so I apologize because you're going to end up seeing my face. We'll see if we can minimize that damage. And we will reshare. And there we go. Any questions at this point? Caprice, have you seen anything in the chat?
Yes, actually, Brandon is asking if fiber maintenance category is fiber maintenance Category 1 or 2.
Fiber maintenance would probably fall under maintenance and operations, and yes, there are situations where that maintenance of fiber, maintenance and operations of your fiber would be eligible under Category 1. It's not an always, it depends. So, if you have specific examples, you want to just nail that down, we can have an offline conversation, or feel free to shoot me an email and I'll get back to you with some specifics. But generally speaking, yeah, the maintenance on your Category 1, your Category 1 connections is going to be eligible under Category 1. And again, under lit fiber, that's going to be taken care of only in the instances of dark fiber or self-provision networks would you need to apply for maintenance and operations on your Category 1 connections. Any other questions so far, Caprice?
No.
Okay.
No.
All righty then. So I will then jump in. Okay, so you should see now. I'm in the training portal for USAC, and this is basically what you would see, with a couple of exceptions. Your own district name will appear at the welcome. The training word won't be there, but generally speaking, this is a pretty substantial replication of what you will experience in your own Epic portal. To start a Form 470 to request services for the upcoming funding year, we're going to click on this link in the upper right-hand section. This basically is the place where you'll go to start any kind of form filling out process or changes to your Epic users or your district information, your building profiles, the district profile. All of those links are here. So we're going to start with clicking on FCC Form 470. And it begins by asking for a nickname, and I'm just going to call this Demo. And then we will click Save and Continue. This page just gives you the basic information about your district, tells you the applicant type, should tell you the number of eligible entities. That's going to be the number of active entities that you have within your Epic portal, and then a description of whether that's a public school or public school district. Also provides your entity name and provides your entity number. We'll save and continue. It asks about consultants. If you have consultants, you will need to put that information in. In this demo, there is no consulting information associated with this School District 20 instance, so there's nothing here. If you do have a consultant, you will need to put in the consultant registration number and identify the person and or company that is providing that service to you. If you are the main contact, you click yes and it will drop your information in. If you are not the main contact, you can click no, but if you are not the main contact, you will need to make sure that whomever is the main contact, that person will need to be an Epic user. So from that landing page, where it says manage users, you would go in and add that person in that section of Epic. Save and continue. All right, so it's going to ask us. This is pretty straightforward here. It's going to ask us for categories of service. What are the categories of service that you are requesting? Is it Category 1 or Category 2? Well, here's the interesting thing. On a Form 470, you can submit a single Form 470 and have all of your service requests on the same 470 for the funding year that you're applying for. So for in this case, anything that you need for the 2026 funding year, whether it's Category 1 or Category 2, you can actually check off both of them. Now, those of you who've done this before, you realize that you cannot do that on a Form 471, but you can do that on a Form 470. It's kind of nice because it lets you keep everything together in one place. It also might have some risks in that if you make a mistake on the one Form 470, those mistakes may have ripple effects on other things that you apply for based on that Form 470 that you didn't think were going to be impacted. So what's best practice? I think that depends on what you're comfortable with and the scope of your projects. I think if you're dealing with something relatively small, then a Category 1 and Category 2 all on the same 470 makes sense. It also makes sense that you might be requesting Category 1 services, but you also have some Category 2 equipment that you might need to be picking up that's sort of associated with the larger Category 1 project that you have going on. So you want to keep that all together because it's basically one project, even though it has both categories of service. That's perfectly good too. On the other hand, if you prefer to have a 1-to-1 ratio to, for every 471 that I'm going to kind of submit, I want a 470 that goes with it, and those are unique and distinct to each other, fine, that's perfect. You go right ahead and do that. You are well within your rights to do that. And that makes perfect sense to me personally. That's probably the way I would go about it. But there's really no right or wrong answer to that. All right, so for this example, because it allows us to do both on the same form, and we don't have to repeat in the demonstration, getting to this point in the 470, I'm going to click both of them so that we can just do this one demo together. I'm going to click Save and Continue. All right, so it asks, is there an RFP for any of the services you are requesting? An RFP is not required. If you have an even remotely complex project that requires technical specs, and it requires more than about 2,000 characters to describe that, or you have terms and conditions that you would expect anybody to meet in terms of your service providers. If you want things like extensions and you have various clauses that are required by your local or state rules to include in your contracts. You may want to have an RFP for just about anything that you're seeking. That's totally up to you, with the exception of Category 1 services for dark fiber and self-provisioned networks. If you are seeking dark fiber or a self-provisioned network, you must have an RFP, a description, a clear description of the services you are seeking is required for those. For everything else, you don't have to have an RFP, but I'm going to show you, and we'll just say upload, and let's see, I dropped that on my desktop, and I called it RFP 2026. So I'm going to open that, gets dropped in, and if I have more than one RFP, I would upload as many as I need to. I'm just using the using the one for now, but you can have multiple. Now we get to this side. Here we go. If applicable, please select the RFPs that apply to your Category 1 services. If applicable, please select the RFP that applies to all your new Category 2 services. So if you had multiple would be listed here. You'll select the ones that would apply to each of the different services. Save and continue. All right, so here's a place where you can begin to provide detail about the equipment that you're seeking. They do provide a couple of examples of the kinds of information that you might put here. I would start with a brief description of the service needed, especially if you are if you are not going to upload an RFP, if you have any kinds of technical specs, minimum bandwidth, max bandwidth, those kinds of things you want to be sure to include, as well as any information about the services requested that would help the bidders develop a bid that's responsive to your needs. So any details that you can provide would be important to include here. If you are seeking extensions, any extensions or length of contract, extensions, etc. You want to make sure that you include all of those here. If you have an RFP, I would probably stick to the brief description of the services that you have need for, and then refer to the RFP for further details. If you are not filling out an RFP and you're seeking Category 1 services for connections to your buildings in your district, good idea to include the locations for those places where those connections will terminate. So this is where you're going to provide at least enough information for somebody to provide a reasonable response to your bid. Any requirements for how to submit the bid? If you want it on paper and you want it submitted by a certain date, like a deadline for response, include that here. Note with respect to the deadline for response, make sure that it is at least 28 days after the date that you are submitting this Form 471. I recommend 30 just to give you an extra little cushion. So that way there's never any question. Deadline for response, 30 days from the date of this Form 471. Any after deadline will be rejected, or that just provide some additional information to let everybody know that you have a certain set of conditions that must be met in order for their bid to be considered in full. So we've got a description of what we're looking for. Now we're going to get into some specifics with our new service request. So we're going to seek a new service request. Are we seeking bids for internet access and/or data transmission service? Yes, we are. We'll think about this in terms of how you would be responding if you were seeking connections between your buildings right now. For Commonwealth folks such as yourselves, you're going to be seeking, in the example that we're using, you're going to be seeking bids to purchase data transmission service only. Internet access service is provided via your NGKI connection, so you do not need internet access service as a part of this process. Now, if you are seeking only lit fiber, the first bullet is going to be your response. If you are seeking to lease capacity, in other words, dark fiber, a specific number of strands, or you're seeking capacity over a leased lit network that will be used for data transmission service. In other words, if you want dark fiber as well, you're going to click on that one as well. Now, you'll note that when I clicked on that second one, if you want capacity, you want dark fiber or capacity over lit network, that it provides you with both options right up front. If you are only seeking data transmission without internet service, if you're only seeking lit fiber, then it only asks you for the questions related to that lit fiber that you are seeking. So we'll show this in the least dark fiber, so you might have the number of strands. There might be 12. Just, that's the number that you're going to be using. Your quantity on your least lit fiber, that's probably going to be the number of circuits rather than the number of strands. The number of strands that are used is going to be based on what your provider brings to you in order to meet your bandwidth capacity requirements. But you're going to have just a number of circuits. So it's going to be based probably on the number of connections out to distant buildings from your hub. In the example that we've got here, we've got 3 buildings that are associated with this particular school district. So we'll just say that there were 3. The minimum capacity, we have to indicate a minimum speed and a maximum speed. Let's just say 10 gigs for that. Obviously, this is going to be based upon what you need, and those answers may be different. Total number of entities served. This again is probably going to be similar to or match or maybe one fewer, because if your NGKI hub comes directly into a school, like it comes into your high school or one of your high schools, then that entity is not necessarily going to be being served by the least lit fiber that you're getting. The other 3 remote buildings would be. But if you have it coming into a network operations center that's in a separate building, then this number here is going to be the exact same number as the number of of circuits that you are requesting. I also asked, are you seeking question?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. Good.
Okay, so Kyle Arnett is asking, do you put in your RFP if you are doing walkthroughs and what those dates are?
Yes, absolutely. And I recommend making the walkthrough, giving a couple of weeks after the walkthrough so that folks can respond. So, if you've got a 28-day waiting period, somewhere in that second week or third week, you would put the early third week, you would put, here's the date of the walkthrough. If the walkthrough is going to be a requirement, make sure that that's clear as well. So, you keep a list of who attended, and then only those who attend are going to be eligible to or going to continue to qualify to respond to your RFP. That's a really good question.
Okay. He's also asking if there's a better place for that.
I would put it in the narrative as well. Put it in the narrative that we were just looking at, as well as in your RFP.
Okay, and that's it.
Okay. All right. So, are we seeking installation, activation, or initial config for this service? My recommendation is always say yes to this. And the reason why I say that is you can always not use it later. But if you say no here now, you can never get it paid for later. Make sense? Should. So yeah, I always say yes here. There is no harm in that, and there is no harm in deciding later on that you don't want any installation, activation, or initial config services. All right, so we're going to save our request. And note that because we filled out those 2 at the same time, that it automatically generated two separate service requests, one for least dark fiber or least dark fiber, and one for least lit fiber. Then you will have to, essentially, you'll have to, in the competitive bidding process, choose between those 2 based upon your bid evaluation criteria. Again, we'll talk about that in probably in a depth that you might not even want to get into, but we will get into next week during our training session next week. Are you seeking an installation plan for the payment or a payment plan for the non-discounted portion of any special construction charges associated with this? If you know that there's potential for special construction, and you know that you would like to you want to have the option for payment plans, certainly you would say yes. You can always, again, click yes here and make sure that you have at least covered your portion of the bases by saying yes here, and then later decide, no, we're just going to pay for it all up front. It's totally up to you. Again, it's probably one of those cover your bases. You can select up to as many as 4 years to amortize the cost. This, again, it's going to be up to you in terms of they want a range. So if you want to like 2 to 4 years, do you prefer annual or monthly payments? Again, that's up to you. But also, if you say no, there's nothing further to add there. So it just depends upon whether you really want the option for an installment plan or not. And we will save and continue. Notice that now it jumped over to category 2. And it says there are currently no category 2 service requests. So we're going to, in our narrative, we're going to say building wire, building, wiring. I'm just going to use building wiring as an example of something that you might be requesting. I will make a quick aside as I say that with respect to internal connections that fall under the auspices of CETS contracts, your CETS networking contracts. So we're talking about switches, routers, hubs, access points, wireless controllers, the licenses that go along with those. Those kinds of things are all under CETS contracts. Those you do not need to have a Form 470 for. You do not need to have a 470 for those. Why? Because those contracts were established using a state networking or a state Form 470 that makes all of those contracts, no matter who those providers are, eligible for E-rate support. During our competitive bidding process discussions, we will talk about the mini bid process. So a week from today, we will get into the mini bid process and what that is and the details of how to go about that if those are the kinds of things that you are requesting. If you are seeking anything that it does not fall under a CETS networking contract, but it is an eligible service and that's what you're seeking, you do need to file a Form 470, and so you need to make sure that that you include that here. Cable tray, it might be cable tray, conduit, racks. There may be a whole host of different things that you know you need. And again, disqualification factors, an RFP, I highly recommend, especially for wiring projects, having an RFP of some sort to describe, a lot of folks will show like a building map and which rooms need to be connected, or which runs need to be replaced. Those kinds of things you want to have as detailed as possible in order to get as detailed a response as you need in order to select a quality service provider to meet your needs. And from the previous example, any terms and conditions, deadlines, walkthroughs, et cetera, lay those out here in this narrative and in your RFP if you are using an RFP, so that that you don't run into problems in the future related to those kinds of decisions. All right, so we're going to start a new service request for category 2. And it starts by asking, are you seeking equipment? Are you looking for basic maintenance? Or are you looking for operations management and monitoring, MIBs? We're just going to use, we're going to say that we're going to talk about internal connections here. And what function of internal connections are you looking for? We're going to call it cabling. It's same as wiring. If you're having a building being wired, you might put it under cabling. Note that if you have other equipment, you might have to do multiple service requests in order to cover all of the different options that would fall under. I mentioned racks in that previous one. You would need to do a separate service request for any racks that would be necessary. UPSs, same thing. So just be aware that it may require your service requests, even if it's a single project, your single project may require multiple service requests under this same Form 470 for category 2. The quantity, cabling, note that the unit here is feet, so you're going to approximate how many feet of cable might be needed for your project. Let's just say it's 5,000. I'm not sure what that would be or not. Also says, please select this option if you would like to create an accompanying category 2 basic maintenance request for this internal connections request. So if you know you want BMIC on this request, you can go ahead and click that, and that's going to then ask you for a few more, or it's going to have a few more details, and it will automatically add it for you. If you don't click that, you would have to add it yourself later. So, you know, if it's probably easier to just click that option if you know that you're going to want BMIC on this. If you need MIBs, you will need to make sure that you request MIBs separately in its own service type request. So if you wanted MIBs, for example, that would be the third option here, and then it'll ask you further additional questions. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but if you have any questions as you go through them, don't hesitate to give me a call, drop me an email. I'm more than happy to work with you as we go through these, or go through them with you together. So I said like 5,000 feet, manufacturer, no preference. Notice that you can say you have any of these or equivalent. If you have no preference in specific, then you can leave it as no preference. And then the number of entities served. So if you know that the cabling is just going to go in a single particular, in a one building, you can have it just be one entity. Are you seeking activation, installation, and initial config? Again, I highly recommend saying yes here, just because if you want it and you didn't ask for it, you can't get it later. All right, we'll save that request. And it brings us back to our listing of Category 2 service requests. Questions at this point? Oh, look at me, I can't spell. Hearing none.
I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay, cool, good deal. Thank you. All right, so we're going to say and continue. If there is a technical contact person who is different from you, the main contact, or the main contact that we indicated at the very front end of this, you would say yes. And then you can either enter their details manually. They don't have to be an Epic user, or if they are an Epic user, then you can search the Epic system and add them. Typically, if you're the main contact person, it's probably going to be you that you want the bidders to reach out to if they have any questions. We will save and continue. Are there any state or local procurement requirements that are related to the procurement of the services that you are seeking? Generally speaking, the answer is going to be no here. There might be one exception, and that exception we will actually talk about next week during the competitive bidding process. That's an important distinction, but if you do have local bidding procurement requirements of your own, this is where you want to either spell them out or provide a link to a list of those so that your service providers can identify what those are and then work within those parameters as you go. All right, so we are really to the end of our Form 470 in terms of what we are requesting. And we're going to go on to review the Form 470. Note that it says when the Form 470 is ready, a task will become available to complete the certification. You will see this task under the Tasks tab above. It's going to feel like, and it really is, taking you out of that. Oh, that hasn't happened yet. 14 hours ago. Look at that. All right, so it hasn't actually processed yet. I'm going to sit here. It might take just a minute or two of. There we go. Saw how quickly that happens. So I find the one that I've just created, and we are ready to go on to certification of this Form 470. We are not finished yet. First thing you'll need to do is make sure that you take a look at the paper version of your Form 470. Make sure that it reads the way you want it to, that it has the details, that things are correct here. Same thing with your Category 2 requests, if you have any of those. Double check your narratives, technical contacts, the details. Make sure that that all looks good. From here it does. Oh, you didn't see that, did you? Because I'm sharing a window. It downloads. I looked at it really here. Let me show you real quick. Oh, unfortunately, you're going to see my face again. Sorry. We'll share that. Share that. There we go. There you go. All right, so that's what that looks like. So this would be the printed version of what you would see on your Form 470. Just double check it, make sure that everything looks correct. Once you're satisfied with that, you can then go back to your Form 470, and now you are ready to check the box and say, yes, I'm satisfied that the information in the PDF is correct. And now we have two different options. We can send it for certification or we can continue. We will ultimately click continue. The send for certification will basically take you out of this page, and it will create a new task for all of your full rights Form 470 users. So all of your Epic users in your portal that have been assigned full read, write, and edit rights to your Form 470, they will get a new task that appears under their tasks list that will tell them that the Form 470 is ready to be reviewed and certified. If you are the person who signs off on the forms, then you can just click on continue. Really, you're using this send for only if you have somebody else within your district who is generally responsible for certifying the E-rate forms. We will continue to certification because most of you will use that process. And we have a whole host of certifications. First off, you're starting by saying that you include only schools under the statutory definition of elementary and secondary schools under NCLB. Oh, wow, No Child Left Behind. Going back a ways. That don't operate for profit and don't have endowments exceeding 50 million. Basically, you're just saying, yes, our schools are public. We don't have any endowments. We are eligible for these services under E-rate. You have then other certifications. I encourage you to read them just so that you know what you are certifying and acknowledging, but it basically is we're following the rules. We know we have to keep our documentation for 10 years. We know we have to wait for 28 days before we select a winner. We've complied with all the rules. We know that we're not, just because we do this, we're not being promised anything. We know that anything that we obtain can't be resold for any value, blah, 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 those kinds of things. There's some additional notices down here. Again, I would encourage you to read through them just so that you understand exactly what you are certifying and what you are getting into. It's not a huge deal, quite honestly, but there are no gotchas on the Form 470. So with respect to each of the checkboxes, they all must be checked in order for you to then ultimately certify your Form 470. We click yes and go back to our tab. And actually, I think we go back to our news and then click the logo. We'll be back to our landing page, and if we go to the bottom and we search for our 2026 Form 470, you'll notice that our demo shows up right here. So it was successfully submitted, And there's all the details of our Form 470. And then you can see generated documents. There's the original version of the Form 470. So if you want to have, and I do recommend, it's a good idea to download the certified version of the Form 470 so that you have it in your possession at all times. And I will hop back really quickly to this, and I will hide this, and Control L. Here we go. Questions. And you can see here, I've got shameless plug for our upcoming trainings. We will discuss in 1 week, we will be discussing competitive bidding and filing the Form 470. 2 weeks, we'll be going over discount data and updating your EPIC profiles. And then in January, we will talk about filing the Form 470 once the Form 471, hopefully by then, the Form 471 filing window will be open.
Joe Sumter is asking, could you please link the page where these video recordings are being housed?
I will do exactly that. I don't have, well, okay, yes. Oh, real quick, let me throw that in the chat for you. That would be here. That would be here. There we go. Come on. Never know exactly what all that stuff is going to do. So there we go. Copy, and we'll throw that in the chat. You should have that. Hopefully you have that somewhere, but I would encourage you, once you get to that page, to go ahead and bookmark it. You will be using that in the future. We will be dropping your discount data into your district folder in that in the E-rate district collection site prior to training in 2 weeks. Other questions? Okay, Joe, drop me an email, and I will go ahead and make sure that you have access to that. We were able to get a bear reimbursement last month. Did anyone else? Yeah, Justin. Remarkably, they are still sending out money, even though FCC is technically shut down. So, you know, we have had some luck still, even during the shutdown, of getting bear reimbursements. So they may be a little bit slower than usual, but they are continuing. Thank you, Stella. Appreciate that. Very kind of you. And I'll do my one more. Any more questions? Proper wait time. I was a teacher back in a different lifetime. Thanks, Kyle. You too. All right. So no more questions. I will encourage you to, if you have any questions as you go forward, as you get into your own Forms 470, don't hesitate to give a call, drop an email, set up a Teams meeting. We're all more than happy to provide any kind of support that we can. It's actually the best part of this job. Love helping you guys.